Now that George Pickens is no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler, Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin are once again on the hunt for a new wide receiver too. Today on Steelers Talk, I'm going to be breaking down my top options for the guys that I would consider trading for and the guys I would consider signing in NFL free agency. Guys that I think have a chance to become Pittsburgh's next number 2 wide receiver alongside DK Metcalf as they gear up for yet another season here in 2025. Before we get into the content today, do me a favor, click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We had breaking news coverage early this morning when we got a word of the trade this morning. And if you missed that, don't miss it when the Steelers end up signing a receiver or trading for a wide receiver to replace Pickens. Make sure you click that subscribe button right now, because whenever there's breaking news action, whether it's the Steelers signing a new receiver, whether it's a big trade for a receiver, or whether it's Aaron Rodgers finally making his decision for what he's going to do in the 2025 campaign, we're going to have you covered with live coverage right here on Steelers Talk. So if you don't want to miss any of that, click that subscribe button. So first up here, let's start with the free agent options, because there's less free agent options, in my opinion, that can truly come in here and be a potential number 2 wide receiver option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, there's a couple benefits to going to free agency. Number 1, you don't have to rely on any other teams. You don't have to rely on another team to, accept your deal or anything like that. It's just you and the agent and the player. And at this stage, you can get players for really affordable deals. The players that are still available are probably willing to take less money to play, especially if they're going to get opportunities to be a legit number 2 wide receiver for an NFL team again. And then the second thing is that you won't have to trade any draft capital to get these players, right? You don't have to give up, any of your now 12 picks that you have at your disposal in the 2026 NFL draft in order to get these players in your building. So there are benefits to signing a receiver in NFL free agency versus pursuing somebody in a trade. And I do think there's some pretty decent options still on the wide receiver market. Now, Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen are both on the other side of 30, and they're coming off of disappointing seasons. But I do think that both of those guys are better than people give them credit for at this stage in their NFL journeys. And then you got Gabe Davis, who we'll talk about in a little bit. He was just released by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And by the way, the Steelers could probably get him for the vet minimum because of the offset clause he had in his deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But we can talk first here about Amari Cooper. And I think that he is an underrated target out there right now that the Steelers can go get. Not only is he very familiar with the AFC North, and I'm sure he would love an opportunity to play the Cleveland Browns twice a year, but 2 years ago, this guy was arguably a top 10 receiver in the entire game. Okay, you look at the numbers he put up there with the Cleveland Browns back in 2023. I mean, astronomical numbers, over 1,200 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns, and over 80 yards per game. He was one of the best true route runners in the National Football League that season. And then you get into 2024, and he definitely had a down year. Now, he was dealing with some injury problems, and he got traded midseason to a brand new football team where he had to build a new connection with a new quarterback, and it just never really clicked for Amari Cooper last year, where he did get over 500 yards, not that much over 500 yards, but he is still a downfield threat. He is still somebody that is an intermediate level of the field demon. He is still capable, in my opinion, of being a really good route running type of wide receiver that's known for creating separation. I do think that he could be a legit wide receiver 2 here in Pittsburgh. You're not asking him to be your number 1 wide receiver, kind of in the way that Cleveland did last year and that Buffalo kind of did last year. And in this system, he'd be the number 2 guy going up against number 2 corners with DK Metcalf on the other side of him. And then, you got guys like Calvin Austin III and Roman Wilson. Hopefully one of those 2 guys really thrives as your number 3 receiver. And, not only do you have the size that you're looking for in this Steelers wide receiver room by adding Cooper, but you bring some much needed route running and separation ability to this room that just hasn't been here since Deontay Johnson left, to be quite frank with you. But another free agent that I do think is worth talking about is Keenan Allen, formerly with the Chicago Bears. And I also think he's a little bit underrated. Like 2 years ago, with the Los Angeles Chargers, Keenan Allen was absolutely balling out too. I mean, he over 100 receptions, over 1,200 yards receiving as well, almost 100 yards per game and 7 touchdowns. Like, he was still balling out with Justin Herbert there in LA just 2 seasons ago. And then last year, was a very tumultuous season. Shane Waldron is a freaking joke as an offensive coordinator. Caleb Williams had struggles as a rookie quarterback. And, even despite that, he still put up some pretty decent production, especially down the stretch. That game against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving, I think he had over like 140 yards receiving. Like, he actually had some really, really good games now, and he also added 7 touchdowns to his totals. So he is somebody that I still think can be a route running technician, can play both inside and out. He's not going to provide much after the catch, and honestly, Cooper is kind of the same way at this point in his career. I think if I had to choose between these two guys, I'd probably go with Amari Cooper. But if the Steelers end up signing Keenan Allen as a route running technician that can still separate at a pretty darn high level and is a consummate pro, something George Pickens never was for this football team, I do think that as a wide receiver 2 option, he could be quite nice here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. When it comes to Gabe Davis, he is a popular name right now because he comes so cheap and he's still only 26 years old. Plus, he's got that big body. He's a great run blocker. So if they're looking for somebody to run block in this offense, Gabe Davis might be the guy that they prefer. Plus, he's a pretty decent downfield option. But he's not much of a route runner, not much of a separator, nothing like that. I do think that out of these 3 guys that we're talking about in terms of free agency targets, I would prefer still Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen to Gabriel Davis at this stage in their NFL journeys. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. If you're going to sign a receiver in free agency, which one are you going to take? Are you signing Amari Cooper? Are you signing Keenan Allen? Or do you want to go with the cheap option in Gabriel Davis? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Fanatics. And while I'm telling you about Fanatics today, let me know which receiver you want to go get in NFL free agency. And now before we get into the trade targets here for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the wide receiver position, let's talk about the wide receiver they've already traded for. And they've already locked up to a long-term contract here in DK Metcalf, where our friends at Fanatics are selling his Steelers jersey, number 4. It's kind of weird. He could go back to 14 if he wanted to now that Pickens is out of the building, but I think he's going to stick with the number 4. If you want to get his jersey today, you can go to chatsports.com/DK. That link is in the comments and description of today's show. And if you click that link and make a purchase, Fanatics sends us part of the proceeds here at Steelers Talk. So if you want to help us out here at Steelers Talk and you want to help yourself out by getting a brand new DK Metcalf jersey, go to chatsports.com/DK and make it happen today. So now let's talk trade options. And there's more trade options than free agency options in terms of guys that could legitimately be wide receiver 2s. But, a lot of these kind of targets depend on just how willing their respective teams are willing to trade those receivers at this point during the NFL offseason. I think that the 2 guys that I would consider big swings for the Pittsburgh Steelers would be Tyreek Hill, and I can already hear the groaning, Steelers fans, Brandon Aiyuk. Yes, once again, we're talking about Brandon Aiyuk here on this channel. But if the Steelers really want to go big and they want to give up an early draft pick for somebody to pair with DK Metcalf, these are the 2 guys that I think that could be traded this offseason that the Steelers could potentially pursue. Now, our Miami Dolphins host here at Chat Sports, Nick Roloff, I had a conversation with him at our desk earlier today, and he said, would you take Tyreek Hill if all you had to trade was a 3rd-round pick? And I said, do you think he could get him for that? And he said, yes, I think you probably could. So he covers our Dolphins channel here every single day. He knows what's what with that organization. And with all the antics that Hill has had over the offseason, he thinks, or at least he would personally be willing to give him up for just a 3rd-round pick. And by the way, the Steelers have 3 3rd-rounders for 2026. All right, they're going to have a comp pick for the Dan Moore Jr. Signing with Tennessee. Then you had a 3rd-round pick in the George Pickens trade. And then, of course, the Steelers have their own. So they have 3 3rd-round draft picks to play around with here. And if all it takes is that 3rd-rounder, where, by the way, you'll still have 2 of them for next year's NFL draft, and you get a superstar-level wide receiver and one of the best downfield threats and yak threats in the history of the National Football League in Tyreek Hill, I mean, that's the type of swing that, could definitely replace George Pickens. I think Tyreek Hill is a better player than George Pickens. So if you wanted to go out and make a big swing and you wanted to upgrade this position truly this offseason, Hill would be the guy that you go out and you try to pursue. And if you can get him for a third-round pick, like Nick Roloff suggests, I think that this is something that the Pittsburgh Steelers should take a look at. But you might be saying at home, but Jack, we just got rid of a problem child in George Pickens. Why would we want to bring in Tyreek Hill, who also has some off-field kind of issues? Well, the first thing that I would say to that is, Pickens' issues extended onto the football field. Were extended into his levels of effort and fighting and all this different stuff. When Tyreek Hill is on the football field, he is all business, all right? That is one thing that you cannot say about George Pickens that you can say about Tyreek Hill. Now, obviously, there's stuff that comes with Hill off the field that maybe the Steelers just don't want to deal with at this point. But if I really want to take a swing, guys, and I really want to go for it this year with Aaron Rodgers and TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, and I really want to put this team in position to really make a run for a championship, Tyreek Hill, when he is on the field and when he is healthy, he is like a top 5 receiver in football. He is the fastest receiver in the game. He's fantastic with his route running. He's awesome after the catch with great vision and instincts as a rusher, and then he's a great downfield threat as well. So if you can get him for that low price of a third-round pick, in my opinion, I think that's something that I would definitely be considering. Also keep in mind when it comes to Tyreek Hill here, guys, is that his contract is kind of set up where he's only got 1 year left, and then it's like the cap hit goes astronomically high next year. So pretty much what you get with Tyreek Hill if you trade for him is you get a 1-year rental, and then if he's great, then you can extend him and you can pay both DK Metcalf and Tyreek Hill if you want. But if it doesn't work out, you can just let him walk, and all you had to give up for a superstar level wide receiver for a 1-year rental was a third-round pick. So for me personally, guys, I would seriously think about it if the Steelers really want to take a swing here, and if that's actually a possibility, that's definitely something to keep in mind. But at the end of the day here, guys, my guess is that Tyreek Hill won't be traded to the Steelers. If I had to guess, if I were the Dolphins, I would not just unload Tyreek Hill for a third-round pick. That's not personally what I would do. So I'm kind of skeptical that the Dolphins will actually come to the table for a Tyreek Hill trade. But if they do, and if that is a possibility, I would say, Omar, get aggressive. If you really mean what you say and you think this team can win a Super Bowl this year, go and get Tyreek Hill. And then when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk, obviously I still think that he's a great fit for Arthur Smith's system. He's a great run blocker. He's an elite route runner when he's healthy, all that different stuff. And, on paper, he'd be awesome here in Pittsburgh. But obviously there's a little bit of a history between this player and the team not being able to get him. Plus, he really ripped up his knee last year, which puts a lot of doubt as to whether or not he's going to be the same all-pro caliber wide receiver he was before the injury when he gets back. So it's going to be interesting to see if the 49ers even, think about trading Aiyuk this offseason. But if he's made available, he's certainly somebody the Steelers can consider as well. Kind of going away from the big swings and the all-pro caliber guys and Aiyuk and Hill, what are some of the other options out there at the Steelers' disposal? Well, you can take a look at some of the players that they've been interested in the past. The Steelers made calls on Christian Kirk, Adam Thielen, and Jacoby Myers around the trade deadline last year. So they've shown a level of interest in all three of these guys. In fact, Adam Schefter said the Steelers were really interested in Christian Kirk. Now, the Texans just signed Christian Kirk. In fact, they just traded for him. But the reason why I am including him on this list is because they drafted both Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel out of Iowa State in the NFL draft this year. So is it possible that they might be willing to let go of Kirk because of the reinforcements they were able to get in the draft? I certainly think that's possible. Adam Thielen, the Panthers just took Ted Aurora McMillan. Is it possible that Thielen might be the odd man out there if the Steelers are willing to give them a certain type of draft pick? Sure. And then I actually think Jacoby Myers from the Raiders is the guy from this group that I would prefer. All right, like he brings good size to the table. He's a hell of a run blocker. He makes really tough catches, and he's a good enough route runner. So if you're looking for a true number 2 wide receiver, Jacoby Myers, the Raiders brought in a lot of different wide receivers in the draft this year. There's certain rumors out there that they could be willing to trade Jacoby Myers for a mid-round draft pick. If you wanted to get like a true legit number 2 receiver to pair with DK Metcalf, Jacoby Myers is definitely somebody I would keep my eye on as well. Now, there's a couple of teams that have a surplus at wide receiver here that I want you to keep your eye on. The first one being the Green Bay Packers, especially because they have receivers that have experience playing with Aaron Rodgers, all right? Jaden Reed is somebody that had a great rookie season and showed some great flashes last year, but had some drop issues. He's great after the catch. Would certainly be a fit for, kind of an after the catch threat here in Pittsburgh. Romeo Doubs is somebody to definitely keep your eye on as well. We'll talk a little bit more about him in just a second. And then Dontavian Wicks had a really good rookie season, but then last year was top 3 in drop rate. And by the way, all 3 of these guys have some level of drop issue that they showed last year. Plus, the Green Bay Packers just drafted Matthew Golden and Savion Williams, and they still got Christian Watson in the fold as well. So I'm willing to bet that the Packers are willing to part ways with at least one of these players here. And out of those 3, I think that the most realistic is probably Romeo Doubs, formerly out of the Nevada Wildcats. And, this is somebody that brings great size to the table, fantastic foot quickness. He's a fantastic route runner. And if you're looking for somebody to just get open, and also somebody that brings some youth to the table, just 25 years old, over 200 pounds, has played in a system that asks him to run block, all those different things. Now, the negatives with Doubs is that he's had a drop issue in the past. Last year he was very sporadic. He's capable of making some really nice catches down the field, but just the inconsistency is something that might give the Steelers pause here. Plus, he had 2 concussions last year. By the end of last season, he had to wear the Guardian cap actually during the games, and then he got another concussion in the playoff game. So he's going to be good to go for the start of the season, but the concussion kind of situation with him is definitely something that's a risk if you end up trading for him. Then another team to watch here, in my opinion here, guys, is the Indianapolis Colts. And, the Colts have some pretty darn good wide receivers on their roster, and they once again added to this group during the draft. But if I give the Colts a call here, guys, and they're willing to part ways with Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, or Adonai Mitchell, their second-round pick from last year, I am absolutely willing to do that for any of these 3 wide receivers, okay? Michael Pittman Jr. is a very good short to intermediate route running threat. He's also pretty darn good after the catch because of the toughness he brings to the table. Alec Pierce is like your true deep threat. Really came on for the Colts last year. Actually had more yards than Pittman, even though Pittman is making way more money than him. So if they're thinking about letting go of a receiver, I would certainly be in on Pierce, who's a great deep threat. And then Adonai Mitchell, coming out of Texas last year, his skill set is of like a true number 1 wide receiver in the league, guys. He's got some really great route running ability, really good after the catch, super smooth athlete, but there is some reports of, not the best football character in the world, so maybe the Steelers don't want to bring on another uber talented, but maybe not the best football character type of guy. But at the end of the day, I would have been fine if the Steelers took Mitchell in the second round last year. So, if the Colts are willing to deal any of these 3 wide receivers, I would be in on that. But that still remains to be seen with the Indianapolis Colts and their interest in dealing any of their wide receivers this year. And then some other trade options here, the final 2 guys that we'll talk about. Allen Lazard of the New York Jets. Now, Lazard did post something on X today. It was the Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not leaving GIF. And that indicates he doesn't want to leave New York. But if the Steelers offer the Jets a certain type of draft pick, Lazard wouldn't really have any say in the matter. So the Steelers could absolutely still target him if they want. And then Curtis Samuel from the Buffalo Bills, he was kind of expected to go in there and be their slot kind of weapon. And Khalil Shakir really came in and had a fantastic season. And I would not be shocked at all if the Bills are willing to let go of Curtis Samuel, who's a really good slot weapon. He's really good after the catch as well. If the Steelers are looking for somebody specifically to play in the slot, I think Curtis Samuel is certainly somebody that's available that could be a pretty decent addition. So who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comments section. I threw a lot of names at you guys today. 16 wide receivers the Steelers could potentially get in free agency or via trade. But let me know down there in the comments section. Which one is your favorite? Is there somebody that I missed on today's video? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And honestly, there's a number of guys on this list, and there's a reason why this list is so long that I would be okay with, all right? And the fact that this list is so long, I think, shows some optimism that the Steelers are going to be able to get somebody that can be a legit number 2 wide receiver for this offense, even with George Pickens outside of the building, all right? So I still have kind of an optimistic outlook on this team and on this season. I know, there's not a whole lot of optimism to go around in this fan base, but I'm somebody that's kind of cautiously optimistic still, and I think the Steelers are still going to be able to get a wide receiver to help them win football games as this team's wide receiver too. Make sure you you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We've come to the end of today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors, powered by Chat Sports. I will see you guys tomorrow, and until then, here we go, Steelers.